Welcome to Lean to the Left, home of no-holds-barred commentary, plus interviews with fascinating people. Some of them top experts, others simply with interesting stories to tell. You'll never know who'll show up at Lean to the Left, the podcast from notfakenews.biz. Now here's your host, Bob Gaddy.
Today we welcome Storm Cunningham, whose work involves helping to restore, rebuild, and revitalize communities that need just a little bit of help. Storm is Executive Director of Reconomics Inststitute, the Society of Revitalization and Resilience Professionals, which is dedicated to improving the process of improving places. He's an author of 3 books, The Restoration Economy, reWealth, and Reconomics, The Path to Resilient Prosperity. Storm also is editor of Revitalization, the Journal of Urban, Rural, and Environmental Resilience. Storm advises mayors, governors, and members of U.S. Congress and executives of foundations, nonprofits, and corporations. In these confidential roles, he kind of stays in the background so his clients can take full credit when they launch leading-edge policies and initiatives. The bottom line is that Storm's work helps to improve communities, and that's a benefit to residents and businesses alike, providing a much brighter future than previously might have been possible. Storm, welcome to Lean to the Left.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate being on your podcast.
Well, I appreciate you joining us. You know, I know you have a lot going on. Can you give us a thumbnail of the work you're doing and how communities are benefiting, Storm?
Yeah, the primary focus of my work right now is launching a new initiative called Rising Places, which actually goes live on October 17th. And it takes my work to a point I've been trying to get to for a long time, is that, for the last 20 years, I've primarily been, the usual trio of author, speaker, consultant, like every nonfiction author does.
Uh-huh.
And so I've been doing that for a couple of decades. And the big frustration in many cases is that I've been laying out a strategic process, a proven strategic process for places so they can revitalize themselves in an equitable, inclusive, socially responsible manner. But people love the whole approach, and many of them have applied it. But it's very complex when you're dealing with social issues, economic issues, environmental issues, political issues, simultaneously. Mm-hmm. People really needed tools to simplify this. So that's what Rising Places is. It'll be live at risingplaces.org, and it actually provides a toolkit for people to get their projects or their entire community accredited as a place that's got increased renewal capacity, meaning they've got the ability to take investment from a foundation, a state or federal agency, a private redeveloper, and actually turn it into resilient prosperity, revitalizing a place and making it more resilient at the same time.
That sounds very cool. In our pre-show call, Storm, you said that your objective is to revitalize, improve quality of life, boost economy and jobs in a way that's inclusive. And you just mentioned that. You just mentioned the importance of being inclusive in this work, rather than top-down focusing on big redevelopments. Can you explain that a little bit more, and how do you go about doing that?
The key is the shared vision, and that's a very abused term these days. Seems like every community has been doing visioning sessions, design sessions, charrettes, all this kind of stakeholder engagement stuff.
Yeah.
And which is fine in itself. The trouble is it usually stops there.
Uh-huh.
So you just end up with a vision statement or a plan or a design or whatever that goes on the shelf along with the community's comprehensive plan and all the other ignored documents, that are primarily there for show. Mm-hmm. And nothing really happens from it. So people end up disappointed at the very least and angry and disconnected at the worst. when they find out that all the effort they put into creating this shared vision did nothing. It was just lip service. So the key, the vision itself is the key. But the problem is that it's got to be part of an overall process of producing the end result that's desired, which is community revitalization. And there is such a process. It's been proven for almost 2 decades now, but very few places have it, which is kind of strange when you think of it. Here's the future of a community at stake, and they've got no process for actually making it better. I mean, every business person on the face of the earth knows you need to have a process to reliably produce anything,
sure,
whether it's clothing or cars or peanut butter.
Yeah.
But the folks who run our communities don't seem to know that. So they just kind of do this stop, start, reactive. They react to whatever a developer suggests and say yes or no to it. It's a very passive sort of role. And they just kind of hope that somehow these projects that they approve magically turn into revitalization. So they basically put the future of their community in the hands of hope and magic.
Well, what do you do to help turn that around?
Well, I show them what that process is. It's simple enough. It's actually quite common sense.
Yeah.
The first step is they need to create an ongoing program for revitalization or resilience or both, because you can't create revitalization just by doing a project. It's like human health. You got to work on it every day in order to regenerate the health of your body. And your body does that. That's why your liver is less than 3 years old. It's constantly regenerating itself. And communities need to do that too. So you got to get out of that project by project mode and realize that this is an ongoing process. You'll always be regenerating. Revitalization isn't an end point. It's a process. So the first step is create that ongoing program. Once you do that, the first job of that program is to create a shared vision that engages all of the stakeholders in the community. The next step is really crucial, and it's one that's often forgotten, is you got to create a strategy to implement that vision. And most places don't even know what a strategy is. Sure. I talk to mayors and say, okay, so that's a wonderful vision you've got. What's your strategy for achieving it? And they'll either look at me blankly, or they'll pull a 400-page plan off the shelf and say, here it is. And I'll have to say, well, no, I'm sorry, but that's a plan. What's your strategy?
Yeah.
And they'll say, oh, no, this is a strategic plan. Okay, well, open it up to the page that shows me what the strategy is. They can't do it 99% of the time. They have no actual strategy for achieving their vision. They just go straight into the planning stage. And plans actually kill revitalization more often than they achieve it.
Wow.
Because communities get into this process of creating the plan. And while the plan's being created, which can take a couple of years, they don't do anything. They're waiting for the plan. Then when the plan comes along, as soon as it's published, it becomes obsolete because the community changes from moment to moment. So they've got this dead document sitting on a shelf that doesn't know good. So I usually recommend, if they can do it legally, just skip the plan. Go straight from the strategy to creating policies that support your vision and getting rid of old policies that are in the way of your vision. And then start putting together partnerships to bring together the resources you need to actually do projects. And you put it all together, program, vision, strategy, policies, partnerships, and projects. That's the process.
While you were talking, it occurred to me that this guy is working with a whole lot of local politicians and developers. That has to be an interesting activity.
Yeah, it can be frustrating from time to time. Politicians tend not to have really long attention spans. So we usually end up with the people who actually had the good idea. It's the mayor or the governor who gets the credit.
Right.
But in most cases, it's some person behind the scenes, a policy analyst or whatever,
Sure.
who actually had the wonderful idea of putting together what you could call it a restoration economy initiative, which some of them have, or a community revitalization initiative, whatever it is. And that's the person I'm actually working with. The mayor or the governor just gets up every now and then and does a talk.
Okay. So, well, that was kind of my gentle way of approaching the topic of well, do you run into situations where there's just a lot of corruption between these politicians and the developers that you have to deal with, you have to recognize and somehow overcome?
Well, that's the norm.
That's the norm, huh?
Yeah. I mean, that's if you decided that you couldn't move ahead with revitalization until you got rid of the corruption, nothing would ever happen. So okay. You just have to work within the system.
Okay.
We Americans love to believe that, America is less corrupt than Mexico or other countries. And the fact is that our corruption is just better hidden. We've got more sophisticated systems for hiding it. Whereas in places like Mexico, they're much more honest about their corruption. It's just right out in the open. And I think that's easier to work with.
Oh, well, there you go. Do you do work in other countries besides the United States?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I've worked in probably a couple dozen countries.
Oh, wow. That's cool. Okay. One thing that I was wondering, when communities are working on these revitalization projects, let's say Baltimore's Inner Harbor, you mentioned that before. Do you help them obtain funding and other resources for these projects?
I have, yeah. For instance, when I mentioned in our pre-podcast talk that I'd done some work with Clemson University down there where you are in South Carolina. Yeah. And I helped them win $10 million from the state to launch their Restoration Institute. This was back probably 18 years ago, so I'm not involved in that anymore. Mm-hmm. But normally I don't really do fundraising. Okay. That's not my thing. I'm not a grant writer, sure. But I do help people put together a strategy, a vision, a package that they can take to funders that's much more likely to inspire confidence in those funders that their money is going to be well spent.
Okay, that's interesting. Can you give us some examples of some of the communities you've worked with and successful projects that have resulted?
Probably the first really large-scale one that I worked with was the state of Montana. Governor Brian Schweitzer, who was a Democratic governor in a very Republican state. Mm-hmm. One of his policy advisors read my first book, The Restoration Economy, and here we're going back, about 2 decades, mm-hmm. and went to the governor and said, I think Montana needs a restoration economy. We've got, the state's covered in old mines that are polluting our streams and rivers, and our streams and rivers are famous around the world for the trout fishing. Sure. We could boost our tourism, our fishing revenues, clean up the state, by restoring these mining sites and restoring our waterways and our watersheds, and, just boost our economy in all the ways that it says in this book, The Restoration Economy. And the governor was smart enough to buy into it. And we worked together to launch the Montana Restoration Economy. And I keynoted the first Governor's Restoration Forum in Billings. And about 3 years later, we published what was probably the world's first restoration economy report that actually put hard numbers to the results, that actually showed that each dollar put into the restoration of Montana's resources was generating over $3 of economic benefit, and was generating over, I think it was 3 times. Also, it was about 3 times the number of high-paying jobs than mining or lumbering produced.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's interesting. Now, do you have any thoughts about how, with the way that the economy is changing today, affecting people's livelihoods, energy, for example, the drive to reduce reliance on fossil fuel. That directly affects jobs, especially like coal miners and people that work in that industry. What can be done to help them, Storm?
Actually, there's some really wonderful restoration economy initiatives going on throughout Appalachia right now, especially in West Virginia, which is right next to where I am in Virginia, where they're not just spending a lot of money on cleaning up these mines so that they stop killing streams with acid drainage from the mines, which is very common. They're actually training former miners, people who have lost their jobs when the coal mines shut down. They're training the former miners to actually do ecological restoration. So the same people who created the mines are now in there repairing the damage that the mine was doing.
That's very interesting. Do you feel like, well, first of all, I wanted to ask you, do you have some examples of some projects you're working on like right now? Can you share them with us?
Actually, for the last year or so, actually 2 years, once the whole COVID crisis hit, and travel was shut down, I kind of took everything online.
Okay.
So prior to that, I'd been traveling constantly, either on speaking engagements or doing workshops or consulting sessions. And once travel got shut down a couple of years ago, I decided to take almost everything online.
Okay.
Which is where Reconomics Institute created a certification program for professionals that they can enroll in and take the whole course online, and where we're now launching our Rising Places initiative so that communities and projects can get accredited in a way that shows which communities are the best places for employers to move to or real estate investors to do their work in. Because right now, communities don't, investors, whether you're talking state and federal agencies who have got money to hand out to communities or whether you're talking private redevelopers, they don't have any way right now of telling which communities are going to turn their money into success. They're really flying blind. They've got no idea who's got what I call renewal capacity, the ability to take money and turn it into actual revitalization and or resilience. The old aphorism, you can't improve what you can't measure. Right. So we're measuring renewal capacity now with this Rising Places initiative. And the great thing is that the process of getting accredited is actually going to boost the community's renewal capacity. So at the same time, they're raising the profile of their community to make it more attractive to investment and employers. They're also actually revitalizing their community.
Do you see going forward the need for a lot more of this work that you're doing with respect to helping communities revitalize themselves? Are you seeing an increase in demand for that kind of service?
Yeah, the nature of it is shifting. The whole COVID crisis created a sense of urgency, more focused on economic revitalization. Yeah. As a result of all the family businesses and retailers and restaurants that went out of business during this period, and so a lot of downtown revitalization work kind of came to a screeching halt over the last 2 years. The other thing is it's a lot more disaster focused. The climate change is fomenting so many new disasters or far more severe disasters than ever before. Look at what happened in Vancouver last year. I mean, they'd never seen that kind of devastation, fires, floods, mudslides, everything was cut off. I mean, it was biblical in proportion. And they'd never seen that level of destruction before. So I'm seeing a lot more focus now on disaster recovery in addition to building resilience and economic revitalization.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about disaster recovery as part of the work that you do, but and the impact of climate change and the storms and the fires and the droughts, all of that must have a big impact on your work and the work of your team, right?
Yeah, we've always at Reconomics Institute, which by the way is at reconomics.org, we've always focused on combining revitalization and resilience. That they go hand in hand, and they're too often done separately. You've got a group of people working on one side of the community on economic revitalization. You got another group totally separate, working on climate resilience and economic resilience and all this other stuff. And in fact, the two should be together because you achieve revitalization in exactly the same way you achieve resilience. It's all based, if you're doing it right, it's based on regenerating your natural, your built, and your socioeconomic assets. That's how you revitalize, and that's how you build resilience. So that's one of the reasons we're certifying these revitalization resilience professionals, so that they know how to bring together all of these resources for both revitalization and resilience, put them in one place so that they can not only revitalize, but they can revitalize in a way that it lasts, which is resilience, so that it doesn't all fall apart the first time some kind of disaster hits.
Is there some sort of certification program that you have to certify people to work with communities like this?
Yeah, exactly. If you go to reconomics.org, you'll see we've got the current certification for revitalization resilience professionals. And we've also got the announcement on there about the forthcoming Rising Places initiative, where you can learn about the accreditation we're going to be offering for communities and projects. Okay. And these individual professionals, these certified professionals, will be able to help these communities achieve that accreditation.
Now, how does all of this work that you're doing benefit the average person who lives in a community that needs some help?
I've always been looking for that average person. Never been able to find it. Everybody seems to have their own unique challenges and dreams.
Sure.
So it's kind of hard to generalize. For instance, if you're in a ethnic minority that's where you've got systemic racism going on in the community, then your approach to neighborhood revitalization is going to take a very different path.
True.
Because you've basically got to restore environmental justice, social justice, economic justice as part of this whole revitalization initiative. If you're middle class and white in a white place, then your approach is going to be probably less socially and justice oriented and more focused on physical assets, cleaning up a brownfield, restoring a park, sure. Restoring historic buildings, that sort of thing.
Sure. That's interesting. Okay, so what's next for you, Storm? You have a ton going on, and it sounds like you've got a very, very interesting set of challenges ahead.
Yeah, it's an exciting period.
Yeah.
So once this risingplaces.org goes live on October 17th, it's going to be a very different world for me, because all of a sudden my work won't just be based on educating people so that they know what to do. Right. I'll actually be giving them the tools so that they can actually do it themselves. They'll be able to get a Rising Places site for their community that gives everybody in the community free access to all of these tools, so that at every level, whether they're the mayor, whether they're a local citizen, whether they're the local redeveloper, a local community foundation, whoever they are, they'll be able to plug in and help revitalize their community in whatever way they can do best with the assets and knowledge they've got.
Now, are there fees attached to Rising Places?
It's free for all the users. There's an initiation fee to get it started. Okay. So there'll be an opportunity for individuals or organizations or the local government to be the patron of the site.
I see.
And that can be as little as like $250.
I see.
And that activates the site because there's a cost in creating this site for the community.
Sure.
That needs to be passed on. But once it's activated, it's free forever.
Okay. Interesting. All right. How can people get in touch with you, Storm?
My email is storm@reconomics.org, and our office phone number is 202-684-6815. And if you just want to see all the stuff that I am involved with personally, you can go to stormcunningham.com. That's my public speaking site, and it's got links to all of my other activities, including the journal at revitalization.org.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to ask you about the journal. I forgot. Tell me a little bit about it. What does it generally contain, and where do you get your information?
It basically contains almost anything starting with re.
Okay.
Not religion, but just about anything else. Whether it's remediation, redevelopment, revitalization, restoration, repurposing, reuse, all of this stuff that makes things better or makes places better. So it covers the whole work, from restoring natural resources to revitalizing communities, renewing infrastructure, and all over the world. And it's read by tens of thousands of civil engineers and planners and individual citizen activists and mayors. It's been going for about 7 years now. We've got over 9,000 articles in there.
Online, it's just online, right?
Yeah, purely online at revitalization.org. And subscriptions are only $9.99 a year.
Well, it's beautifully done. I've been looking through it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it really is. It's good writing and nicely presented, nice and concise. So I highly recommend people, if you're interested, to go check it out.
And I should mention that the current issue is always free, so you can read everything in the current issue without a subscription. The subscription just gives you access to that archive of over 9,000 articles.
Oh, very cool. Okay. Well, I've exhausted my inquisition.
Yeah, you look exhausted.
Yeah, I am exhausted. So have you got anything else you'd like to add before we kick this thing to the curb?
Just a little slogan I like to use that seems to be resonating with a lot of people is that what we restore restores us, and the places we revitalize us.
I love that. All right. Well, Storm Cunningham, thank you very much. You've restored my faith in I don't know what.
Well, my work here is done.
Very good. Thank you, my friend. Hey, guys, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this Lean to the Left video, and you'll come back on a regular basis and check out our interviews with guests on topics that I hope you find interesting, entertaining, and enlightening. Our audio interviews stream weekly on Mondays, and depending on what's going on, also on Thursdays. And many are also produced as videos like this one. In addition, we provide narrations of much of the commentary published on the Lean to the Left blog, commentary by some excellent writers with perspectives on a whole range of topics. Now you can sign up as a member at leantotheleft.net, and of course it's all free. Also, let your friends know about this podcast and take a minute to subscribe. Just go to podcast.leantotheleft.net and you can subscribe there. You can also check out the upcoming interview schedule, and you can listen to all of our episodes too. You can also support this podcast by clicking on the Donate tab at the top of the page, where you'll find links to Buy Me a Cup of Coffee and also PayPal. Follow us on social media. Facebook at the Lean to the Left Podcast, Twitter at Lean to the Left 1, Instagram at Not Fake News. Now remember, our goal is to be informative and entertaining as we comment on the latest developments in the news. You guessed it, with just a little lean to the left. Now this is Bob Gaddy signing off for Lean to the Left. Thanks for sharing your time with us.